Good evening, welcome to my channel. Sorry for any extraneous building noises. There seems to be some sort of heavy duty project going on up the road somewhere, but hopefully that won't interfere too much. I have another story for you based on random words as ever. This one is a little bit tricky to read because it's written in the form of a dialogue between two characters. There's nothing to indicate who's speaking apart from the content of what they're saying. And in the actual written version, I've just used dashes instead of quotation marks, which is a technique used sometimes by one of my favourite short story writers, Mr. Donald Barthelme, whom I would highly recommend if you're into very strange, quirky little stories. He wrote quite a few of his pieces in the late 60s and 70s as dialogues. So in order to read this effectively so that you know what the hell's going on, I'm going to try something a bit different, as you'll see in a minute. What else do I need to tell you? It's a bit rude. It's a bit perverse, a bit strange. I don't know what was going on, but the words suggested some strange idea to me. So if you're a sensitive sensibility, or there are children around, you may not want to play this one. Anyway, yeah, what more can I say? It's called, no, I'm sorry, the random words, of course, that it is based on are and it's story number 136, and it's called What He Would Have Wanted. I was asexual before it was fashionable. That's the first thing you need to know, Doctor. You don't need to call me Doctor. I'm not technically... I prefer to if you don't mind. It helps me, well, open up, I suppose. I can't just tell my tale to any random stranger. I need to remind myself that you're a mental health professional. That I am. Anything that makes you comfortable is fine by me. I've only dated once, Doctor, in my mid-20s, and we didn't get beyond, I guess you'd call it, heavy petting? Ironic, really. That's a taxidermy joke. Go on. Kissing I always found, well, mildly icky. Even if you observe a fairly rigorous oral health regime, it's hardly hygienic, is it? And all that mauling of my upper portion, well, that just made me giggle. Tickled mostly. Do you want to tell me more about your partner? Not really, Doctor. I was young and he was scarcely out of his teens. He soon moved on when I made it clear that there would be nothing going on downstairs. Downstairs? You know, hindquarters. Anyway, as I say, he broke up with it within days of that specification. That must have hurt. Not really. It was a blessed relief, to be honest. I'd been dreading anything like that, and now I didn't have to face it. I'd never really had those feelings, you see. That tingling my girlfriends used to talk about. Butterflies in the stomach. Butterflies elsewhere. You never fell in love? With my work, yes. With any actual people, no. I have firm friendships, but I've always let them know where my boundaries lie. I suppose... What? What was that thought? I suppose one thing he called me just before he left did hurt. He called me sexless. Ridiculous. Clearly, I'm a female of the species. I'm asexual, not agender. Although the kids these days seem to get these things confused. You're technically still pure. Yes, Doctor. Although, can we please change the subject? Of course. How did you get into taxidermy? At school, we had a pet raccoon. A lost baby that the teacher nurtured back to health when she found him caught in a poacher's trap. Miss Feinstein was a real nature lover. She brought it to class to show us. But the raccoon, Rocky, of course. Sorry, Doctor? It's not important. Please continue. Well, one day Rocky gnawed his way through the chicken wire of his cage and escaped from the classroom. We discovered this on a Monday. Rocky must have broken free sometime during the weekend. To cut a long story short, after a protracted search in which we all took part, one of the boys found him stuck in the very same woodland trap Miss Feinstein had rescued him from. It was peculiar. Raccoons are generally quite clever. Not this one. Indeed, Doctor. Miss Feinstein and most of the kids were devastated. I was fascinated. The trap ensnared one foot, and Rocky had all but chewed through his own ankle before he must have passed out from blood loss. Sorry, are you okay? Yes, I'm fine, really. You look a little green around the gills. I'll maybe open a window if you don't mind. It's a little stuffy in here. Anyhow, Miss Feinstein wanted to arrange a burial for Rocky, but I had other ideas. I'd seen a TV documentary on taxidermy, and I'd borrowed a couple of books from the library. She let you preserve Rocky? Not immediately. I had to get Mr. Patel, the biology teacher, on board. He was a fisherman and he helped with the entrails. We made it a bit of a science project. He helped with poor Rocky's revival. I just told you that. Aren't you listening? Sorry, dumb joke. Keep going. I caught the taxidermy bug and it became my main subject of study that summer. Mum and Dad didn't mind since it taught me all about biology and chemistry. You have to know a lot about anatomy, plus formaldehyde and other preservatives. I was getting straight A's in the sciences by the autumn. I'll bet. That's what I've been doing ever since. 36 years this November I'll have had my practice, Doctor. That's quite an achievement. I think so. We're the longest established taxidermists in the country. I've probably worked on over 1,000 cats and dogs, about 100 rodents, 50 or so projects for local museums, everything from king cobras to giant scorpions. Sounds challenging. Not really. A snake is pretty much a glorified draft excluder. Pop in a basic armature and stuff it full of sawdust. I meant the variety. Well, you get a little blasé when you've stuffed everything from tortoises to woolly mammoth. A mammoth? Just a baby. And more of a reconstruction than strict taxidermy. The museum only had a few fragments. Still, that must have been an extraordinary challenge. It took me and my team, I now employ 5 other taxidermists, the best part of a week, just to get the armature and positioning right. Yes, I've had my share of challenges. I thought I'd seen it all. The mind boggles. What could beat that? A dinosaur? A dragon? An Olympian. A what? An Olympic medalist. A rower called Ian McPherson. 6'4", 15 stone, vast. Muscles everywhere. Won gold in Beijing, 2008. You're kidding, of course. I am not. A human being, but surely that's not legal? Well, it's complicated, certainly, but his parents had his will, fully witnessed and notarized. They had detailed instructions he left in his suicide note. Suicide? Yes, it's really sad. Ian suffered from depression ever since he retired at 34. That's a shame. It is. Fortunately, he kept himself in wonderful shape right up until he ended his life with carbon monoxide in his garage. Fortunately? His parents wanted him posed in his rowing boat, as he would have been in his prime. Holy fuck! Excuse me? I'm sorry, that was unprofessional. Do you want a hanky to wipe up the tea? There, take 2. I'm so sorry. What on earth did you say? I'll admit I was shocked at first. I tried to make a stupid joke, rather like one of yours. I said, I'm not sure I have a bell jar big enough. I'm glad you laughed. They didn't. They almost walked out. I apologised. I thought to myself, well, why not? He's a mammal, after all. Nothing more nor less than an adult male human. Volume, approximately 1.5 cubic metres, with a surface area of around 4 metres squared. Well, that's one way to think about it. And his parents were very keen. They told me they had wrestled with the concept for several days, until the mortician called to remind them that Ian couldn't be stored indefinitely. The mortician's name was Kenneth Braxton, and I must say his makeup was garish, and his sternum stitching far from ideal. So you went ahead? Once all the paperwork was in place, yes. His college in Oxford had agreed to house him, and his family were to be given access rights in perpetuity. I knew I only had a short while to work on him, given the human body's eagerness to, well, decompose. That's right. In fact, I'd arranged to work in the mortuary in their refrigerated room. There were so many constraints and difficulties. Obtaining convincing glass eyes, studying rowing videos. I had to read up on mummification. Oh, really? As I told his parents, most of my projects have fur or feathers, both of which can be preserved almost indefinitely. Ian's clothing didn't exactly cover much of his skin, and that was going to prove something of a challenge. How so? Well, even with the most high-tech mummification process, there's going to be a certain amount of shrinkage and discoloration over time. Fortunately, his parents were willing to work within reasonable parameters of expectation. Meanwhile, I sought additional help from an industrial chemist who developed an amazing matte lacquer that, well, you don't need to know the boring details. Honestly, it's fascinating. Feel free. I would, but we only have 7 or 8 minutes, so I'd better cut to the chase. Whatever works for you. Well, Doctor, there's no easy way to broach this. As I said, I'm thoroughly celibate, asexual, dead below the waist, as my somewhat cruel sister-in-law would say. My brother's the opposite of me, you see. 7 kids, Catholic, at it like bunnies. Would you prefer to pick this up next week? No, I would not. Doctor, I have a dilemma. Obviously, I had to remove my subject's apparel in order to work on the armature and skin superstructure. Of course. He had to be naked. I'd put the clothing on as the final stage of the process. I must admit, Ian was a magnificent specimen. I quickly noticed something I hadn't expected. Well, I simply don't have much experience in the matter of male human genitalia. Ah, exactly, Doctor. I had read that in death, particularly with athletes, there can be a lengthening, a thickening. I think you know what I'm trying to say. I can hazard a guess. It was generously proportioned, and of course, I had to position it, conceal it somehow. I didn't want an unsightly bulge to spoil my work. Nobody wants that. And while I was working on it, go on, the tingling. Tingling? Yes, as I mentioned, the telltale sensation my friends told me they felt. A quickening, an excitement, irritating yet undeniable. It felt like fate that I should meet this perfectly handsome, perfectly preserved man, that he should be the one I see. Yes, Doctor, it had me completely discombobulated. Imagine, I'd made it to 58 years old without feeling this way. I was beside myself, completely distracted. So much so that I had to relieve myself. You didn't? I mean, not with Ian. No, I don't think that's legal, is it? I think not. So, a courgette, one that I placed in the freezer. Need I elaborate? I think I get the picture. And ever since I completed Ian, which I managed to do within just 6 days, I've been thinking about him, inert, yet powerful, perfect, yet powerless. I've started dating. Dating? Oh, wonderful. I'm not so sure, Doctor. I've met with several men from a website I can only describe as rather basic in its offerings, and yet it suits me fine. A hookup site. I believe that's what they call it. I've had several lovers. Well, that's good, assuming you're happy with it. I'm not so sure. We use substances. Chemsex. I'm sorry? It's a term used by... Well, never mind. Go on. We have a couple of... We use formaldehyde, ketamine, and Viagra. I need them to be inert. This is entirely consensual, I should add. Of course. It's the second most thrilling experience that I've ever had. Every single time. I see. Well, I can't see anything wrong with it. Did I say there was anything wrong, Doctor? No, not at all. Just that some people... Forget it. Each to his or her own. Exactly. That's what I've been telling myself. I suppose I'm not an asexual anymore. It would appear not. Look, I'm really sorry, but I do think we have to leave it there. Can you make it the same time next week? I can, but before I go, aren't you curious? About what? Well, I said that Ian, or how he made me feel, was the second biggest thrill of my life. Don't you want to know what the first was? Yes, do enlighten me. That would be Rocky. He's still on display in my old school, you know. Oh, that's wonderful. So, until next time, absolutely. Thank you for not being judgmental. There's no judgment here, Miss Llewellyn. None whatsoever. And there you are. That's my rather strange, slightly comedic story. Hope you enjoyed it. If you do, tell me. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, which is there or there, somewhere. I don't know, I can't remember. I don't know where I'm going to put it. And the other thing is, you can share this video with your friends on Facebook or somewhere else. Why not? It'd be great if you did. And I will see you again very soon. Bye-bye.